Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, Two Blokes Chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
We were chatting the other day, Robert and I, about the fact that not enough radio stations and media outlets in general do enough about women's sport. And we said, you know what we need? We need a specialist correspondent. And when it comes to the word special, there is no more special correspondent than this one. Alyce Tzotzis, good morning to you.
Good morning. How are we?
Well, I'm okay. I can't speak for you or Rob, but I'm okay.
Good morning, Alyce. Welcome to Two Blokes Chatting. And it's a show that I hope you don't feel uncomfortable in because we're very welcoming here. And Neil is quite right that the particular subject, we gloss over it, we get excited about it at times, but we don't actually cover it enough. So what we hope you can do is exactly that. And I guess the big ticket in town at the moment, Neil, fair to say, should be the Brisbane Lions are playing in a grand final today.
Well, apparently so. Alyce, tell us about that.
Absolutely. So Adelaide and Brisbane are meeting today at 1:30 p.m. Central Time, 2 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time out there at the Adelaide Oval.
Oh, really? I thought it was 4 o'clock. I'm glad you told me that. I've learned something already. I'm going to be watching the footy a little earlier. Okay, that's good. Excellent. Well done.
2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today, so it's going to be an absolute cracker. Adelaide and Brisbane have just been absolutely standout teams the last few years. You know, the likes of, Dakota Davidson and Erin Phillips going head-to-head is going to be amazing. And the prelims last week were fantastic as well. Adelaide just too good over Melbourne, and Brisbane just too good for Collingwood as well. So today will be a fantastic matchup. One of the big talking points this week, though, has been about the newly introduced 12-day concussion rule. Chelsea Randall had a concussion in the prelim and has been ruled out, and she advised in the week that she was not going to challenge that decision to have her sit out the big one today. What are our sort of preliminary thoughts about it? I mean, I know it's a fairly recent rule that has come in for this season across both men's and women's competitions, but what are our thoughts on that?
I had
day sit out. What do we think?
I had an opportunity to listen to an interview yesterday with Chelsea, and she was talking about an incident she remembers as a young person going to watch a game of football where a player that she knew had a concussion the week before and went through all the testing and reckoned he was right. And then early in the game received another knock, went down on the ground and died on the ground. And that stuck with her very, very strongly. So while she's disappointed about missing out in the grand final, she was very clear in sending the message that I cannot play because of the circumstances. These rules are in place for a reason, and I'm more than comfortable to abide by them, as disappointing it is. And then, strangely enough, there was another report of a game this week or recently in the AFL where a player seemed to be avoiding the doctor because he didn't want to do a concussion test because he was scared of failing and couldn't play. So that's just a different and typical boy-girl view of the incident. But Chelsea, to her eternal credit, was superb in sending a very clear message to other players on this subject.
Absolutely, and I guess as we do more research, and there is a lot of research, especially around CTE and sort of the long-term effects of, heavily, knocks, well after someone's playing career has finished. I think if we keep these studies going, keep track of what's happening, so the more we know about the subject, the more sort of informed decisions we can make to keep the players safe, and to make sure that we're not putting their health at any kind of detriment. It was interesting. I was reading a little bit of an article and some comments that Nick Riewoldt and Matthew Lloyd and their opinions about the matter. And, Matthew Lloyd said, yes, trust the science. If you have to sit out for 12 days, you have to sit out. But Nick actually said that he would go to the Supreme Court to challenge the decision. If he felt that he was right to play, then he would go to the Supreme Court to try and not be ruled out of a game. I think it was more so like in this grand final sense where you would miss an important game, that he would take it to the Supreme Court. So I thought that was very interesting. I don't know how that would play out and work. I'm not sure litigation in that sense from a sporting point of view. But
well, there's an easy way to fix that. The club just writes omitted next to his name on Thursday night when they announce the teams, because that's the only way to handle. Until we get, I was just using Joel Selwood as an example, until we get Joel Selwood putting his hand up and saying, yeah, I'm going to miss because got a concussion and I don't want to detriment my health, this is going to continue on. If you've got buffheads with an attitude like that at a serious time, we've got a long, long way to go.
If only we had someone on the phone who works in a legal firm who could provide us with some secrets. The other thing that crosses my mind, and the thing I like, and this is, the health of the player is clearly the thing, but with this called injury sub now, it was concussion sub for a while, I think the 12-day penalty is a really good one. Because not penalty, as in sitting out. Because if you make the decision to take a player off and they cannot play for 12 days, if they're genuinely concussed as a club, you should feel okay about that. There was some talk in the game, I can't remember which one it was, where Oscar McInerney was taken off and he was replaced by a running machine in a game where Brisbane needed some legs. Now, arguably, Chris Fagan, who I believe absolutely said he couldn't run in the last quarter. He was okay in the second quarter, but as the injection wore off, he was unable to run. Now, if they had said, righto, Oscar, you can't play next week, which he didn't anyway because of the injury, they might say, well, actually, we'll stick you down in the forward pocket or something like that for those run-of-the... Now, if it's a concussion and the person's been knocked out, male or female, then they're not going to be able to play and they're going to take them off, and the 20-minute time off. I just think it's a really good rule across the board. None of this, if it's concussion, you have to miss 12 days. But if it's twisted ankle, no. If you invoke the concussion or the injury sub, that player is ineligible for the next club game.
Yeah, I would suggest it should be a concussion rule only.
That's the other approach, yeah. Yep. But either way, unquestionably, they missed the game. So what else is going on in women's sport apart from that, or is that the big ticket in town, Alyce?
I think that's the big ticket in town. Certainly the big ticket in Melbourne, even though there aren't any Melbourne or Victorian-based teams playing in the big one today.
But by the way, too, can I just pick you up on that?
Sure.
Because obviously there are unwritten rules in the media. You must not refer to them as non-Melbourne teams. You must refer to them as interstate sides because everything is centred around Melbourne. Sorry, really hard to talk with my tongue in my cheek and my teeth gritted at the same time.
You know what? I'm just taking that note down.
Yep.
To state. Right, got it.
Yep.
Alyce, we do have a very successful Australian women's team. They've recently broken a record.
In what sport,
the men's cricket.
Thank you. You just didn't say that.
I didn't know.
You said you had
I meant to say cricket. The longest streak of victories in 50-over international cricket. The Australian women's team did that in New Zealand recently. It's interesting that a few years ago you just talked about Healy and Perry maybe, but there's a few more names now. Molyneux and Schrute, and I'll tell you what, there's a one that's coming through.
Lanning,
Meg Lanning. Ooh. There's a young girl by the name of Darcy Brown. I heard her interviewed about 6 weeks ago. She'd just been surprisingly selected to go with the Australian team to New Zealand. Made her international debut over there, and bowls very, very quick. I saw an over of hers on in an international game, and yeah, she's probably, I would imagine, up around 120. Perhaps, but in women's cricket, that is pretty quick. So there's another name we'll hear a lot of in the not too distant future, I'm sure.
I hope so too, and it's really good to see. It's really good to see that the women's teams are getting a lot more exposure. It's not that the women's competitions weren't successful and weren't followed. It's just we didn't have free-to-air TV eyes on them as such. So like you said before, Rob, we know the names of Meg Lanning, Alyce Perry, Alyssa Healy. We know them. They have been around a long time, but it is, the Darcy Browns of the competition. It's the Hannah Darlingtons that are starting to make their way through the ranks as well, and seeing them on that international stage is just so pleasing to see. And no doubt the men's team as well would be sort of giving them a bit of a congratulations, knowing that that's no easy feat to have that winning streak. And it's good to see as well Mitchell Stark, who's Alyssa Healy's husband, coming out and supporting her and the teams whenever he can or when his schedule permits. So that's fantastic to see as well.
I think it's one of the an interesting thing is too that in that instance, and we've just talked about Alyssa Healy's husband, as distinct from she is Mitchell Stark's wife. It's the vocabulary is starting to change ever so subtly.
Yeah.
But I remember Sam Collins, who plays for the Gold Coast Suns, when he got picked up by Fremantle. His dad is an absolute legend in local football, and I said to him, "How it must be great news about Sam." And he said, "Yep, today I stopped being Kevin Collins, and today I became Sam Collins' dad." And I think there's a bit of that going on with women's cricket as well, and women's sport in general. I think that's really good.
Yeah, and Alyce Healy certainly got stark covered at the moment anyway.
And Alyce Perry, I believe, was actually named after our women's sport correspondent.
Was she?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
Yeah. Yeah. The fact that she's 6 months older than you is neither here nor there. Alyce, we've got to get going shortly. Anything else you want to bring into the conversation today, or are we waiting with bated breath for 2 weeks from now to hear more from you?
Yeah, just sort of touching on a little bit about the Barwon Senior female competition as well. We've got the round 1 of grading games at the moment, and having a bit of a chat to Rob earlier about the local scene. What's the buzz like around sort of women's local footy in the Geelong area at the moment? I mean, the competition looks fantastic. There's so many teams competing, over the course of today and tomorrow. How's the women's footy scene down there?
Well, it's happened. The change. I won't use transition. The change in the thought process locally has been quite amazing. When the women's and girls' footy started, it was talked about because it was unusual and they shouldn't be playing and it's a man's game. Get out of the road. But just in a very short space of time, it's just become part of local footy culture. There's an expectation that clubs are going to have a women's team and there's a women's competition, and it's happened very, very quickly. So it doesn't have the big fanfare anymore, not because it's not attracting attention. It's just now part of the local footy fabric.
Mm.
I think that the Cats have had a fair bit to do with that.
Most definitely.
And I can remember back when certainly I was involved at Box Hill in those days, because they were called Box Hill before they converted their name to Hawthorn, and in fact down here as well. And I think that the thing that back in those days, Tamara Luke, who played for Box Hill, was a former cyclist. Renee Gehring for the Cats was a former netballer. Anna Teague was a former basketballer. And now we're hearing names like Purcell and Morrison and Brown and names like that coming through the ranks because they're footballers.
Correct.
And I think that's a massive change as well.
Yeah, and good news to our correspondent, team player, Sean Simpson. We've talked a lot about his son Socks Up Sam, but his daughter Charlotte is now 16 and she's very much in the local Falcons system, and it won't be too long before we'll see her name very prominently in Geelong footy scenes, I'm sure.
He said to say good day. I spoke to him yesterday. He said to say good day to you and the team.
G'day, Sean.
Because yesterday was the annual celebration of the day of his birth.
What was it really?
And of course, being the caring guy I am, I rang. None of you guys did, of course, I bet.
No, I didn't. I didn't even know it was his birthday. But happy 51st birthday, I think, Sean.
Happy birthday, Sean.
There you go. He's probably not listening now. He's got the sads and gone away. Hey, Alyce, it's absolutely delightful to have you bringing some structure and intellect to this program, because it's not something that we generally have involved at this. No, that's not fair. It is really good to have you on board. I think you're going to bring some very useful perspective to the sporting component of this program.
Yeah, hope so. Hope to bring some more enlightening, thought-provoking discussion around women's sport, not just here in Australia, but around the world as well.
Enlightening is not something that we're known for on this program, so it would also be a novelty doing that.
Good on you, Alyce. All the very best. Stay happy. We'll talk to you in a fortnight, if not before.
So before you go, tip for this afternoon's game?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Bearing in mind I've got my finger poised over the phone, ready to hang up.
I reckon she wants to say Brisbane, but she thinks Adelaide will win.
Yeah,
Am I helping you?
Do you know what I reckon?
I
reckon Adelaide will win today.
Point for me, but I think Brisbane might be too strong. Davidson up forward and Lauren Snell in that midfield. I think they might just be too strong for Adelaide today.
Nice work. The 50,000 people going to Adelaide Oval today might disagree with you. I hope you're right, but I don't know that you are. Anyway, thanks for joining us, Alyce. We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks, hey?
Thanks, guys. See you.
All the best.
There she is. Alyce Tzotzis, our new women's sport correspondent here on 94.7 The Pulse.